Good afternoon. I am Mark from Digital Home Systems. Some of you may know me. So today, considering it's the first of our webinars for the year to begin with, we're starting with something quite simple, but something that will actually ultimately, hopefully, be useful for you guys. So we're going to be doing IP security cameras connecting to a Home Center 3 controller. This actual connecting is slightly different from your previous systems through Home Center 2s and your Home Center lights, as they share the same interface. So this is pretty much just a refresher on the new UI system that's available in the Home Center 3. So firstly, what we actually have to do, we're first going to be using HikVision cameras for today. Those are the cameras we actually stock, and the cameras we found that are the easiest to actually set up to be actually compatible with Home Center controllers. Let it be, you still have a previous Home Center light, Home Center 2, or the current generation Home Center 3 controllers. So primarily the upside of the actual HikVision cameras themselves is they support dual stream. So most cameras actually support dual streaming systems. They generally have a primary stream and then a substream. The substream on most HikVision cameras, not all HikVision cameras, but the majority that we've actually been able to test, have multiple formats for it. The newer versions for it have H.265 plus encoding for them, which allows for less space to be consumed. However, for actual purposes of connecting the Home Center 3s, we need MJPEG. So the substream on the HikVision cameras that we're going to be using today, and most HikVision cameras themselves, actually have the ability to switch between H.264 encoding and MJPEG encoding. This is a video codec. They support up to 30 meters of IR, reasonable distance, 12-volt DC or PoE. Primarily, the cameras we're actually going to set up today are actually going to be in our showroom. That's actually over here in Greensboro. They also have built-in motion detectors, mobile monitoring systems via the HikConnect app, and also the HikVision cameras themselves, HikVision NVRs themselves, actually support what is called, they call it a virtual host. It essentially allows you to connect up your cameras instead of needing to have them set up previously connecting to your NVR. You can connect them directly to your NVR, go through setup, and then still be able to actually connect up to those cameras, even though they're hooked directly to your NVR system using a porting stream. So firstly, what we actually have to do is we actually have to set up a HikVision camera. Now you can actually see one just over my left-hand shoulder, just above that blind controller itself. That's the one we're actually going to be setting up today. So I just quickly need to close out screen sharing and open up a tool that we need to actually use for this. So the tool that we're going to be using today is called SADP. It actually supports HikVision cameras and is used to actually activate cameras themselves from HikVision. There is another tool available called IBMS. However, for setting up, it generally is more used for setting up more complex systems such as the HikVision intercoms and such. In that instance, considering we're only doing cameras today, we only have to use the SADP tool. As you can see, there's currently a couple of cameras already set up. Those are the ones connected up to my workshop. And today we just need to essentially activate a new one. So if I refresh, there should be a new camera pop up. It's a completely inactive camera. So what we first need to do is actually activate our camera. So to do that, we simply select our camera, a little tick on the left-hand side, and we'll ask us for an actual password for it. For this one, I already have preset ones. So and then just simply click activate. As you can see, we have the cameras as we did beforehand. However, we now actually have this camera here, one that's actually currently marked as ticked, as actually active now. So from here, we can do a couple of things. One of the things you can do is actually enable DHCP, which is not suggested considering you want to actually have a static IP address for a camera. You can also enable HikConnect. HikConnect is actually the application that HikVision themselves actually have in case you want to monitor your own system remotely. It's a little mobile app for it. We don't really need it for this instance considering these cameras are hooked up to our showroom. However, what we can do, considering we're not using DHCP, is actually set our own static IP addresses. For this instance, I already have pre-selected addresses for it to go in. So we'll just type them in. Make sure the substream is the same. Don't change the port, as there's a standard communication port for them. However, you do need to change your gateway as well. So the gateway is your actual router or modem in your household. That is my IP address. And then you just need to type in your password for it. And confirmed. Now, what actually happens with this is, as we can see, the one's currently ticked, it's active, the IP address is within our standard range, and also matches up with our modem. So what we just do then is we can now go into our web browser. And then we can actually go to the IP address that we had selected for that device. So I have done 107. And the device loads up. So this is the HikVision interface for it. HikVision has a couple of brands available in Australia. I believe currently it is HikVision. Simply type in username for it. Username, unless you actually change it by default, is admin. You can't actually change username until you actually get into this interface to begin with. And simply type in the password that you set for the camera. And it loads up into our interface. Now, I do not have the supported codec for my browser, so unfortunately I'm unable to actually view the camera stream currently in this. However, there are a couple of things we actually have to change on the back end of the camera in order to actually make them function with the HomeCenter 2 controllers. At this current point in time, the device works perfectly fine with a HomeCenter 3, and you'll be able to hook it up without any issues. However, if we actually want it to be able to do one of two things, one is actually stream video. The second one being able to connect up to the previous generation of home automation controllers from Fibaro, so HomeCenter Lite and HomeCenter 2s. There are a couple of adjustments we have to make. Firstly, we just have to go into configuration, and we need to change its substream type. It's pretty much all HikVision cameras come with multiple stream types. There's mainstream and substream. We can get access to that by simply going to video and audio. Wait for this to load up. And under stream type, there is mainstream and also substream. Under substream, there's a couple of options. The one we want to change is video encoding. HomeCenter Lights and HomeCenter 2s do not actually support H.264 as an encoding software, so you need to change it to MJPEG. Simply leave the frame rate to what it is, and same with its iframe rate. You can change your video quality however you wish. I'm going to bump it up slightly, and simply just press save. After you've set this, you'll actually be able to connect up to your HomeCenter 2 and HomeCenter Lite controllers without any issues onto the webinar. So when you actually go to add your camera to your system, much like how you do with a normal device, you simply go to your settings, you go to your devices, and you have a couple options in your actual include function. So you have your Z-Wave devices, your NICE devices, and other devices. So these are things such as linked devices, quick apps, and IP cameras. Now we can simply just select an IP camera. And generally, if you're not using a camera that's supported by the actual, has a default template in your HomeCenter controller, give me 1 second. Really need to fix that. So generally, if you're using a camera that's not actually supported by default template, not to worry. There is actually an other function down here that allows you just to choose any sort of camera for it. So if you already know the actual streaming address for it, or the snapshot address for the actual camera itself, you can just manually type that in. The HikVision cameras that we have are not officially supported. However, you can still use the actual HikVision camera selected, because most HikVision cameras themselves actually use the same stream type. So this is pretty much a universal one for most cameras. This one for the camera that was set up there, and the one that I actually also have, which is actually currently behind the sign, is, bear with me 1 second. Actually doesn't support the 102, it supports the simply 1. So all you need to do for it is copy this across, and put in picture. Now, if you don't actually know what your stream path is for your actual camera system, you can find it a number of ways. Sometimes the device's manuals actually have it themselves. Sometimes you can email the manufacturers as well, and they might be able to give it to you. Occasionally, you can find them inside the actual cameras themselves, or you can go to certain websites. One such website is iSpy. And under this, if you just type in the brand for it, so I've already searched HikVision before in the past, it will give you a list of all known stream paths that they actually have for it. So it's listed by model. So if you find a model for it, you simply just search it in and it pops up in here. So you should be able to go for that. Other than that, most of the time the manufacturers will actually be able to tell you what the stream path is. If you do want the stream path, we actually do have a manual from one of our previous ones we've done for the Home Center 2 that actually just has a copy and paste for it. It pretty much covers most of the cameras that we actually have as well. So after that's actually done setup, so we currently have our JPEG, which is simply called snapshot system, and then we have an MPEG streaming path. So what we want to do for this is select our protocol. The protocol I've set up for the camera is HTTP, not HTTPS. The camera, you can just name whatever you want. So this one is actually connected to the board behind me. So it is show board. And that'll simply appear. And then we have what are called preview settings. Preview settings are what it'll actually pop on your dashboard until I actually refresh and save. The preview function over here is actually grayed out, but I'll be fixing it in a moment. And at the current point in time, I just want to snapshot systems. You can make it so your snapshot, your snapshots have a refresh rate for it. So every couple of seconds, it'll update the actual snapshot it has, which is a still picture. It's useful if you want to reduce the load on your actual system for bandwidth purposes, because the home center controller actually has to open up the connection to your cameras, and it can sometimes get some level of delay for it. In this instance, because I don't really have any main essentially load on my system, I'm just going to change this to refresh every second. You then also have URL paths. So if you actually have, one moment. If your camera actually supports the ability to essentially move in directions, there is a specific term for it, but I can't remember what it is. You can actually make your camera pan and tilt using the commands that are actually built into your home center controller as well. It essentially just sends a command to your camera using HTTP, TCP, however it accepts the command, to just rotate in your position as well as stop rotating. The camera I have mounted up there, mounted up here there, and that one over there actually do not support that function, so I won't be putting them in. Now, it actually comes down to actually setting up the camera. So you need to actually find the IP address of the camera. I've got mine written down. The SADP tool itself actually shows you what the IP address is. And generally, when you set up your actual security cameras themselves, it's best to set up by a static IP address. You can use DHCP, but if you're getting your Fibaro or your Fibaro Home Center 2, Home Center 3, or if you're using an NVR like on the back end of your system, it does cause issues if for some reason the DHCP lease is denied or something like that, and it essentially changes to, let's say, IP8 instead of IP6. So I've already set up the camera in a static IP, and the IP address for it is 6. The port address for this isn't actually necessary. Port address is more useful for if you have it connected up to an NVR that has a virtual host function. So it's able to port forward the actual camera IPs into your system, and you need to choose the actual port for it. As these cameras are not connected up to an NVR at the moment, I will not be doing that, and I do not need to at the current point in time. By default, for some reason, it doesn't actually have use username and password ticked on by default. So you just need to click inactive and simply type in the credentials that you've set for it in the previous SADP tool. However, as you didn't see that before, it's a very simple process. So I'm just going to type in what I have, which is admin, the default one for it, and then the one that was set for it. And simply just press save. Now, once that's actually saved itself, because I haven't actually refreshed my page, I still can't go to my preview section. So what I can actually do is go back to my home section, go to maximize, and as you can see, the camera is actually behind that screen. So unfortunately, you can't see me. However, you can actually see that every second, if I actually try and make this a bit larger, give me 1 second. If I go back to the devices themselves, you can see it a bit larger. Preview. It actually has all your necessary information there. However, something that is worth noting as well is if you don't really need your clients in the back end of this, this actually shows the full URL for it, which is a security issue that I'm going to have to get them to sort out at some point in time, because it actually shows both your username and your password for that camera itself, which is not a very good thing to have in the system. However, as you can currently see, I'll stick my arm out there. You can see my hand appear, and then it disappears from the system. So if you actually, that's just JPEG connection. However, if you do want MJPEG to actually pop up, you simply change the display as MJPEG and you click save. So that should now change to MJPEG. However, you can run into a little bit of an issue. However, I've already set it for this camera. What you need to actually do, because unfortunately I wasn't able to show you because the SADP tool wasn't able to activate for it, is you actually need to set a specific function on the HikVision cameras themselves. So I will simply just connect up to that HikVision camera that I currently have set up. Username and password. And we'll connect in. Currently, this screen will not actually display until you change it to the specific required format. So if I go back to configuration, inside the device, there are a couple of things you need to do. So first, with your video and audio, you need to go to your substream. And as I said beforehand, most cameras support for the substream multiple different video encodings. To actually be able to get your camera to stream, you need to choose MJPEG. You can set your bit rate, your resolution to whatever you desire for it. Generally, it's recommended that you set it to a reasonable streaming frequency for it. If you set it higher, it increases the actual storage on your actual NVR systems. And if you do make it quite, updating quite quickly and has a large frame rate for it, you can experience stuttering delays actually viewing them on the Home Center 2 itself. Sorry, Home Center 3. So after that's done, there are 2 more steps you need to actually take for it if you want to connect up to a Home Center 2 system. Though this is not really necessary considering Home Center Lights and Home Center 2s are not as prevalent being sold as they are. If there are previous systems that you actually essentially use, you do need to change 2 settings. So the first setting for it is you need to go under security and you need to change your RTSP authentication, add web authentication to basic, to digest and basic. By default, it's just the digest. And unfortunately, if you do not set those 2 options to it, it will not actually allow you to view the stream. It's a simple security requirement for it, where the Home Center 2s and Home Center Lights couldn't handle digest, however they could handle basic. The Home Center 3 can actually support digest and basic. So one thing I actually forgot to mention that I probably should have is when you actually have your cameras in the system, you can actually hook them up by scenes. Now, unfortunately, you can't get the inbuilt motion sensor into the Home Center controller at the current point in time. But what you can actually do is you can set up a trigger in your system via a scene that whenever one of your devices was to activate, so let's just say in this instance, since you wanted a door window, you can simply set up a new little scene. So when motion is detected, or I'll set a new one, block scene, let's call this camera snapshot. Choose any requirement for it, for a picture. Set up your triggers for the event. So in this instance, showroom, and then the device we want for it, which we can have as, let's choose our motion sensor. When motion is detected, you can actually choose your camera from your list, which is showroom board. You can actually get it to send a photo to the user, and then also choose the user for it. So at the current point in time, it's set to admin. So now, by default, whenever that motion detector actually goes off, it will send me an email. And I don't want to move too much because it will send me quite a few emails because I have a quick reset on that guy at the moment. But yes, so that's just the scene that you can set up for it. It'll send you an image of the moment that motion sensor actually went off. So not only will you be able to actually receive notification through your email system, you'll also be able to actually track what time it actually triggered. So in case there is a break-in somewhere, you'll be able to actually tell exactly when it was and actually check through the NVRs history as well, instead of having to scrub through an entire duration. So thank you for attending the webinar. Well, other than that, if you have any more questions, such as an actual manual how to set up the HikVision NVR systems to be able to support the cameras, feel free to email either office@dhsys or myself at dhsys, so mark@dhsys.com.au, or feel free to call us. We pretty much have a list of guides for necessary stuff regarding setting up NVRs, as well as hooking up NVRs in such a way that you can use your cameras with your home center systems or other automation systems.